He tried to protect all and love all. Despite this positive feeling, his girlfriend not only befooled him, but with the help of her gang tried to kill him. Unaware he has friends who are feared in whole Florida, and they are going to repent to mess with this old lad. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The movie kicks off in a quiet little town called Bonanke, Florida, where the police chief, Matt Whitlock, is chilling at home, watching TV. His evening takes a turn when he gets a call from Anne, who tells him that someone has broken into her house. Matt rushes over, ready to handle the situation, but the place seems calm and quiet. He goes inside and starts asking Anne some questions about what happened. She tells him the intruder came in through the bedroom window, so Matt follows her to the bedroom, only to discover that it was all a ruse. Apparently, this is just a playful game they do to keep their relationship spicy. But then, right when things are heating up, Matt gets a call and has to leave, leaving Anne disappointed. The next morning, Matt is at a cafe, catching up on his last case in the newspaper. Then Chris walks in and starts teasing him about being there alone. Turns out, Chris is dating Anne, which makes the whole situation pretty awkward for Matt. After that, Matt heads back to his office, where he finds Che, the medical examiner, who's pestering him about some business deal. Che even jokes around by reaching for the evidence money, which makes Matt lock the door to shut him up. But Matt's mind isn't really on Che. He's thinking about his ex-wife, Alex. She drops by to ask for the keys to his house, so she can pick up some of her stuff. But things quickly turn into an argument. She manages to grab the keys and storms out, just as Che reappears, but Matt's phone rings, and he has to take off again. Later, Matt is out fishing on the docks, with Anne right there beside him. Her boyfriend is out of town for the weekend, so they take the opportunity to have some fun. But despite the sparks between them, Matt and Anne aren't exactly on the same page. Matt still has feelings for his ex, and Anne is still with Chris. That night, Anne gets a call and drives to the hospital with Matt. They meet the doctor, but Anne introduces Matt as her brother, which is awkward, to say the least. The doctor pulls out some papers and drops a bombshell. Anne's cancer is back, and it's worse than before. She's got maybe 5 or 6 months left, and the only treatments that might help are experimental and ridiculously expensive. Outside, Matt tries to comfort Anne, and later, they end up back in bed, talking about the situation. Anne doesn't have the money for treatment, and things are looking grim. The next day, Matt shows up at Anne's place with some flowers, trying to cheer her up. She shows him her life insurance policy, which has some strange changes that Chris apparently made. Just then, Chris shows up, so Matt makes a quick exit. But when he sees Chris getting rough with Anne, Matt finds an excuse to knock on the door and break up the fight. The next day, Matt and Alex finalize their divorce papers, but his mind is still on Anne. She calls him about her treatment, telling him she found a company that will lend her the money she needs and secure it against her life insurance policy. If she dies, the company collects $750,000. They start planning how to spend the money in case the treatment doesn't work, but Anne seems hopeful. That night, Anne is upset after getting news from the company that they won't accept her policy, and with only 2 days left before the deadline, she's running out of options. Later, at a bar, Chris shows up and starts asking Matt some weird questions about his relationship with Anne. The conversation ends with Chris threatening to kill Matt if he ever goes near Anne again. The next day, Anne comes by to apologize for what happened the other night. She's not mad at Matt, and she's also changed her life insurance policy to make Matt the beneficiary instead of Chris. She tells him she's leaving town the next day to get away from Chris. Later, after finalizing his divorce, Matt calls Anne over and gives her a bag full of drug money he'd been holding on to. But when he gets home, instead of finding Anne, he finds Che, who he quickly kicks out. Matt tries calling Anne, but she doesn't pick up. Worried, he drives over to her house and tries calling again, but still no answer. He decides to check things out for himself, but ends up triggering some lights and getting spotted by a neighbor, so he speeds off. Not long after, Anne's house is engulfed in flames, with firefighters all over the scene. Matt is stunned as he watches the fire consume the house. The next morning, after the fire is finally out, a firefighter shows Matt 2 bodies that were found inside. He's in shock and can barely speak when Alex shows up. While she's talking to him, a firefighter finds a device that was clearly the cause of the fire, ruling it a homicide. Matt and Alex head over to Anne's workplace, where they talk to her dentist and learn that Anne had quit her job because she was terminally ill with cancer. They also hear from another woman that Anne might have been having an affair. As they're leaving, Alex gets the number of Anne's doctor and insists on going to talk to him. Matt tries to start a fight to avoid going because he knows the doctor will recognize him from when he was with Anne. But Alex isn't taking no for an answer, so they head to the hospital together. When they get there, they meet a different doctor who tells them that Anne was perfectly healthy and didn't have cancer, which leaves Matt reeling. He rushes out to find the doctor he met with Anne, but instead, he finds a different man with the same name. When this doctor tells Matt that he doesn't have a patient named Anne, Matt starts to get suspicious. Back at the station, an old woman is working on a sketch of a man that looks a lot like Matt, and when she points him out, along with another black man, they just dismiss her as being a bit racist after handing over the pen to get it fingerprinted. Matt gets a call from the D. They're asking about the drugs and the cash because they need the money for another investigation. Yup, the same cash Matt gave to Anne. Meanwhile, Alex uncovers a new lead. Anne had recently taken out a life insurance policy, but the details are still murky. Matt offers to contact the banks to dig up more information. While he's on the phone, he notices the fax machine printing out something. It's the phone records, with his name plastered all over them. Matt plays it cool, pretending it's just a personal message, but inside, he's panicking. As everyone else tries to retrieve the records, Matt swiftly scans the documents, erases his name, and just in the nick of time, deletes everything before the records are sent. When the fax finally comes through, it's distorted, but Matt convinces them he can still read it, so they don't bother sending it again. But he totally forgot about the cell phone records, which are in a different database. When Alex reads out a number, Che recognizes it as Matt's and quickly pretends it's his, saying he'd called Chris for a beer. Che then pulls Matt aside to ask him about the calls and finds out that Matt's been sleeping with Anne and even gave her the drug money. Matt's in too deep to tell Alex the truth. The evidence is piling up, and she'd never believe him anyway. Soon after, Matt gets a call with the results from the fingerprints on the pen. He and Che head over to the address of the so-called doctor, breaking in only to find the place empty. As they search around, Matt stumbles upon some bank records, while Che finds an ID for a man who's actually a worker at the morgue, named Paul Cabot. On their drive back, Che suggests they should flee to Costa Rica, but Matt isn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. They eventually arrive at the bank, where Alex is handling some business regarding the $1 million insurance policy. Turns out, the beneficiary name hasn't been changed. It's still Chris, although there was an attempt to change it. Matt calls the bank to check on the statement he found, and the police also discover a bank card in Paul's name, though he doesn't show up in the phone records. As Alex is giving instructions to track down Paul, the bank calls Matt back, letting him know that Paul has made a reservation at a hotel and is probably there now. On his way out, Matt gets caught by the D agents who are there to collect the money, but he outsmarts them, saying he already sent the cash to the D office a few minutes ago using one of his officers. As he heads to the hotel, Matt calls pretending to be Paul to get the room number. Meanwhile, Alex and her team have also found the same information. At the hotel, Paul is meeting with Chris, who's very much alive and carrying around fake IDs. Matt gets a hold of the key card to the room and makes his way in, beating the police who are stuck at a bridge. He knocks on the door, but ends up using the card to enter. As he looks around, Paul tackles him from behind, and a fight ensues. The struggle takes them out onto the balcony, with Matt dangling over the edge. Despite the intense battle, Matt manages to push Paul down and save himself. Just as he's about to grab his gun, he spots a case filled with drug money and takes it. Not long after, Alex arrives at the hotel. As Matt is riding down the elevator, he spots her, so he decides to hide, but the receptionist mistakes him for Paul, setting off a chase up the stairs. Matt makes it to the 4th floor. He drops the case and runs into Alex, pretending he just showed up and telling her to meet him in the lobby. He then calls Che to share the good news, but Che is more interested in taking the money and escaping to Costa Rica. Alex, suspicious of something, asks Matt to sit down and talk. They end up at a restaurant, reminiscing about their early days, even sharing a moment of holding hands. But then Alex spots a shard of glass in Matt's hair, making her suspicious again. Back at the station, Alex gets a call and informs Matt that the receptionist is on his way to the station. Meanwhile, Matt receives a trembling call from Anne. She's still alive. She tells him that Chris and Paul forced her to go along with the plan, faking the bodies in the fire and swapping out dental records. Alex is almost certain that Matt is involved in this mess. Sensing the danger, Matt climbs out of the bathroom window to meet Anne, escaping just before the receptionist arrives. But before Alex can question him, she gets a call confirming that Matt was listed as the beneficiary on the insurance policy. When she goes to find him, he's already made his escape. Just as the D agents show up at the station, Matt heads to the house where Chris and Ann are waiting. He sneaks inside, gun in hand, and sees Ann, but before he can make a move, Chris tries to shoot him. Matt manages to break down a door and catch Chris off guard, but Ann is the one who ends up shooting Chris. However, things take a twist when Ann turns the gun on Matt, revealing that she was behind everything, not Chris. She sees the money and shoots Matt in the leg, ready to finish him off, but Alex arrives just in time to shoot Ann, saving Matt. Alex was convinced she'd caught Matt red-handed, but when she checks the case, it's just his GPS tracker inside. Outside, Alex covers for Matt, but the D agents are still after the evidence money. That's when Che shows up with the money, pretending he couldn't find the D office. In the final scene, Matt is fishing alone when Alex shows up, smiling. She sits down next to him, and it looks like they're on the path to rekindling their romance, ready for a fresh start. But then Che shows up with the insurance policy, reminding Matt that he's still the beneficiary of the $1 million. Alex quickly puts a stop to that, insisting it's wrong, leaving Che upset once again.